Hey guys, Masters here, and I'm going to give you a first look at the first level of our project, SPV3 for Halo Custom Edition. For those of you unfamiliar with the project, it's a remastering of the original game, but unlike Halo Anniversary, which just focused on the graphics, we focus on gameplay elements as well. Some of these gameplay elements come from the later games, some of them are ideas that never made it into other games, some are from the books, and some are completely original. Unlike Halo Anniversary, which redid all the cinematics, what we've done is we've simply updated the textures of the original game. You can see it here in the sky, and in a second you'll see it inside the ship. We've added normal maps to all of the characters, which means they have more depth when the light shines on them. Other things have been updated for consistency, like Captain Keyes is wearing his white uniform that he had at the end of Halo Reach. And you'll see the whole ship has a new color scheme that's designed to have more colors that pop out, as we wanted to show how colorful the game is. The original level had a lot of tans and grays, and we've gone for a more gray and black color scheme with some highlights of yellow through it. The reason for this is when you have the dynamic lights in the background, as well as all the particle effects and the colorful enemies, they really seem to pop, which is something that we really wanted to show. Everything you see here is built over the original game's graphics. The geometry you're seeing for the ship is the same geometry that was shipped in 2001 when the game launched on Xbox. For characters like Captain Keyes and the crewmen, we've done some model enhancements to them, making their hands look a little bit better, updating their textures. And the display panels on the ship have also been updated to make them more crisp.
And Cortana.
We've also made one major change to the cutscene, where we no longer have the hangar bay with Sergeant Johnson. The reason for this is that we needed the space in the map to be able to add new areas to the level to explore. But we think there was a good trade-off, as it was a very overly long cutscene, and while it had a lot of character and introduced Johnson to the game, we really wanted to focus on the gameplay elements, which is our #1 priority in providing a new experience. Our feeling is that if you want to see an updated, remastered graphic Halo 1, you already have that in the Master Chief Collection and also on Xbox 360. So with that, let's get started. Now, we've made a few other changes to the level. Halo 1 had some events that happened in Pillar of Autumn that only happened on easy and normal difficulty. However, we expect people who are playing this to be well versed in the game. So we wanted to add these little environmental flavor bits back in. One thing to note, everything in the game's gotten retouched. That includes particle effects. You also see as you go through the hallways here, there's some light bloom. That was a feature introduced in Halo 2. We have that now here. We also added turrets to the ceiling of the ship, which you'll see in more detail later on. That's a little homage to Perfect Dark. If anyone is old enough to remember that game, there was a mission where you had to go through your home base and activate different switches on the wall to activate defenses, so we have that too. As we go about the ship, you'll see that we have new marine models, new barricades. The oxygen tanks have been redone as well, and those are actually destroyable now, so you can detonate them to create a concussive blast to not launch enemies. The doors all have dynamic lights as well, which we did so they'll shine off the weapons and all the new shaders and normal map technology that we've added to the game.
Good to see you, Master.
Now, you'll notice not everything is quite done yet. There's some weird artifacting on the Chief's armor. Cortana, who you'll see in a second, hasn't received her updates yet.
With those odds, I'm content.
Captain Keyes needs some adjustments in his eyes, as they're really creepy right now.
No thanks to your
This is pretty much what we're going for. You can see that there's new detail in the Chief's armor, not just in the amount of texture, but in the way the light reflects off of it. You'll see little scuffs and dents in it that the original game just wasn't capable of presenting.
Captain, the cannon was my last.
Like I said earlier, the graphics are an important component for the remaster for us, but the most important thing is gameplay, so I'm just going to quickly guide you through our design philosophy, since we've all seen this cutscene 100 times before. Now, with Halo 2 and the introduction of all the new concepts and abilities, a lot of the original game was lost. Things did not play like Halo 1, it plays like a whole new game. And that was something we wanted to avoid. We wanted to have a game that still felt a lot like Halo 1, while including a lot more weapons, a lot more enemies, and a lot more features. Part of our process for figuring out how to do this really went back to analyzing all of the Halo games. There are a lot of changes in Halo 2 which do not respect
Get
a lot of
Cortana
the
off
decisions
this
that
ship.
made it
Keep her safe from
into
the
Halo
enemy.
1.
If they capture her,
One of the
they'll
things
learn
that
everything.
we loved about
Force
Halo 1 was
deployment,
how
weapons
unique all the
research.
weapons were for different situations.
I
Halo
understand.
2 kind of blurred the lines with having Covenant
The
counterparts
Atom
for
will
human
continue
weapons,
evasive
and that's
maneuvers
something you
until
just
you
didn't really
initiate a
have in
landing
Halo 1.
sequence.
Sure, you had
Not
the
that you'll
plasma
listen,
rifle and
but
the
I'd
assault
suggest
rifle,
letting my
but they were
subroutines
both
handle the
used
final
very
approach.
differently, and even though we now
Excellent
have
work,
two
Cortana.
mid-range assault
Thank you.
rifles,
Are you
we
ready?
have the human one and the Covenant plasma rifle, the way you'll go about using them is very different, and hopefully you'll be able to see that in this video. What's important to me more than weapons having defined roles is having defined experiences. Your experience using an assault rifle
Good
versus a
luck,
plasma
Master
rifle
Chief.
should be totally different, even if they are both effective mid-range weapons. The plasma rifle is very good at stripping shields, the assault
Your
rifle is very
architecture
good
isn't
against
much different from the
flesh
others.
and armor.
Don't get any funny.
If everything is tuned correctly, you should have different levels of tension as you play
Don't
through the
keep
game,
it loaded.
and have to think about what you're using and what's the best way to get past a difficult encounter. Now, let's get started. We've actually given you the pistol a little bit earlier on, just because the original sequence didn't make that much sense. Here you actually pick up the ammo and get to find your first pack of grunts to fight. For the pistol, we've made some changes to it as well. It still plays a lot like the original, but we've added some slight weapon blooms so you can use it more effectively at close range, but it is still a scopable long-range weapon, although it is not as effective as the other rifles that we have in the game. It's a good sidearm, and it's very useful in a mission like this where it's close quarters. You also notice that the assault rifle is a blend of Halo Reaches and Halo 3s. That also has reticle bloom, although it pretty much functions identically to the Halo 3 one. What we have changed though is that the rate of fire speeds up, and that's to encourage slower combat at long range, but also to get people who get real close range to enemies to hold down the trigger and use it like they would a traditional bullet hose. The original Halo 1 assault rifle has been transferred into the SMG. It's nearly identical. We've added slight recoil to the weapon, so every time you fire it kicks up a bit, and we've tightened up the weapon's accuracy to compensate for that.
Orders have breached
In the
fire
end, what you
control.
get is a weapon that works much like the original assault rifle, which was a lot of fun. You'll notice there we killed a white elite. There's new ranks of elites throughout the game, and elites will use weapons that they haven't before. Not just new weapons, weapons from other games, but we've also added things such as the plasma pistol for them. Here you'll see the player activating one of the auto turrets, which activated the turret in the back, which will give you covering fire and help you fight the elites. These are placed throughout the ship, which should hopefully put a new twist on old areas that you've already fought in. We have a couple other interactive elements throughout the ship. One of them being that you'll see in a second is gravity terminals. We have crewmen around the ship trying to maintain the gravity of the ship, and if you let them die and do not reactivate their terminals, the ship's gravity will start to fail and you'll have to fight in zero-G environments. Now, while other games have done low gravity sequences before, what we've done is something totally different.
We go out and they
Because we're changing a global value in the game that affects gravity, it affects player movement, it affects grenade throws, it affects the way that particles interact. So you can be sailing around in the air, grenades will suddenly fly out of your hands like rockets, and it's just a very cool and new experience. There you can see the elite taking out the first crewman who's maintaining the ship's gravity. That was a red elite, but here we have a white one as well. One thing the elites did not do in the original game was throw grenades. So we have a new rank of elites that use plasma pistol, and they will throw grenades, the traditional elites do not. Now, right over there you saw me pick up one of our armor upgrades. This one in particular is the visor mode from ODST, which gives the player new night vision capabilities, which is something we've added through an enhancement to the game's engine. The flanking route, I was able to activate one of those turrets. We've tried to place the turret terminals in locations that are more dangerous than it would be if you took a safer route, such as going over there around the other bend and fighting with the Marines. The turrets are destroyable, so if any of those grunt grenades misses me, it does have the ability to destroy the turrets. Now, a fun little fact about that health pack in the new design, that's actually the design that was going to be used in Halo 3 that was found in the game by other modders. It's not something you'll find in it regularly. So now that I picked up another assault rifle, you'll notice that the display changes depending on how much ammo you have in it. This was a little thing we decided to add in that just makes it a little bit easier to track your ammo. It's a cool little feature. Now, switching from the assault rifle to the plasma rifle, I'm going to go back to my point that I made earlier, where you're going to have different experiences using the two guns. Now, the assault rifle would have shredded those grunts up, but the plasma rifles just aren't quite as good against flesh. What they are good against, though, is shielding. And you'll notice there that quickly it just shreds that elite shield, leaving you open for the headshot. You also notice that some of those barrels behind the elite exploded and shoved them out. It's just one of the little things we want to do to make the levels a little bit more interactive and kind of capture a little bit of that destroyable environment feel that Halo 2 had that really none of the other games really followed through with. Now coming up, you're going to see another elite with a plasma pistol. And I just want to talk about them briefly as new enemies. They throw the grenades, like I said, which the other elites with plasma rifles and needlers do not. But they also know how to use the overcharge feature. Now, in the original game, Jackals would use it, but they're not too big of a threat. The elites are very interesting because when you move into cover and try to recharge their shield, they'll recharge their plasma pistol and be ready to take out your shield when you come out. Now, when you have something like the overshield, which used to pretty much be just extra shielding, now an elite with a plasma pistol can be a threat. Another change we made to the plasma pistol and the plasma rifle is that we use an unused function in the original game so that the lower the battery is, the less effective the weapon is at getting rid of heat. So when you have a weapon that's almost dead, you'll have a harder time doing sustained bursts of fire. We hope that this will encourage players to use it more in bursts rather than hold it down like a fully automatic weapon like you would with the human guns. Now, this is our introduction to the brutes and to the battle rifle. A thing that was hinted at in Halo 2 but is actually only available in one mission is that the battle rifle's 3-round burst would have been super effective versus brutes, as it can remove the helmet and get the headshot. So here we introduce you to the brute packs. They use brute plasma rifles and brute shots here, and you get access to the battle rifle. So if you're good enough and the brutes are low rank enough, a burst to the head will rip off their helmet and get you the headshot. Higher ranked brutes will take 2 to 3 bursts to take down, at least on legendary difficulty, which is what this is being played on right now. One thing you won't see in this clip, but you will see later, is that when you zoom in with the battle rifle, it fires in single shots. This is something that was intended for Halo 2, but was cut in the last few months of development. It's not quite the precision rifle like the DMR that you would think it is, as it does have bullet travel time, and at long range it doesn't have the ability to get the bullets that far. The bullets will disappear after a certain distance, just like other battle rifles and pistols and precision weapons in the Halo series. So here you'll notice to pick up a brute shot, and I've also picked up 2 new grenade types, the cluster grenade and the vortex grenade. Now with the brute shot as well as our other explosive weaponry, we've added a new feature where the actual impact of the projectile to a target will do extra damage. So for example, with the grunts, 1 shot to their chest with the brute shot is an instant kill, but it would take 2 explosive splash damage shots to kill them. Here I just used a vortex grenade, and you can't really see it because I threw it behind there, which is a good tactic with it. The vortex grenade will pull enemies, weaponry, and vehicles into the field, and it can either crush them, explode them, or set off a super explosion when the other grenades inside the field detonate. Now that red elite just threw a grenade. He's one of the plasma pistol elites, and this fight just shows how they can really break up what would be predictable combat, especially the veteran Halo players. It's just a really great way of breaking up the fight and adding a little twist that changes the flow of the gameplay. Now here we have one of the little cinematic events, and we've redone the particles for here. It's still a work in progress. I'm not too happy with how it's turned out. But every aspect of the game gets touched. Now, sometimes we'll take a classic encounter, like over here where you encounter the 3 grunts, and we'll put a new twist on it. Over here, since we have so much content in this game to deliver, we introduced the camouflage elites over here. And this is a cool little fight. You know, you have 1 elite at the end, and the other one's just kind of lurking around. We've opened up the doors on the side, which were normally locked on legendary difficulty, so you can go around and flank through them, or just skip the encounter altogether, if that's what you choose to do. You also notice here the plasma pistol has a drain, just like in the later games. So we've tried to discourage people from just always carrying the plasma pistol and holding it down. It also has slight spread now too, while the original game was completely accurate. There's not much really to say here about these little tunnels. The lighting looks really cool, especially with the way it reflects off the new textures and shaders. Going here to the right, we've also added back in the door that you have to bash down, as well as the dialogue from Cortana. And over here, I'm going to pick up a new armor upgrade called Radar. What Radar does, it makes everything on your motion tracker show up, regardless of how fast it's moving. It's a nice ability, although you have to give up your health regeneration or your visor mode or any of our other armor upgrades, which you'll see later in the game, in order to use it. Here we have the replacement for the Brute Spiker. What we wanted to do with the brutes is give this idea that they use older Covenant tech. So they use the older generation plasma rifles, they have the brute shots, and they have this old-fashioned needler, which doesn't have the homing abilities of the famous purple one you've seen in all the other games. But it functions mostly like the Spiker. It has the ability to super combine explosions, but it also has a unique ability in that the projectiles do damage when they enter a target and when they explode. So it has the longest stun times in the game, as well as the ability to make enemies explode. It's really useful against active camouflage elites, as it can disrupt their camouflage, and it can also be ricocheted off walls more effectively than the Spiker or Needler ever could. It also has a bonus damage for the melee, which is something that it, the Brute Shot, the Needler, and the Rocket Launcher all share, as well as the Hunter Guns that we also have enabled in the game. Here we have the Cluster Grenade, and that's a grenade that detonates instantly on impact and drops smaller projectiles all around. What's cool about it is that you can actually jump over the little projectiles if someone throws it at you, and you can also launch it at the ceiling and just be really creative with it and how you want the projectiles to land. You also over there saw the Brute kill another one of the crewmen who's manning one of the gravity terminals. I'm going to flick this on real quick, but I'm going to leave it off, just so you guys can see a little bit of the low gravity action later on in the mission. Now, because our level is mostly grays, what we've done for the burn section of the ship is actually make it look like it's been melted by the heat. It's not totally done yet, you can tell by some of those steel columns, but there you go. And also we have active camouflage elites in over here. They just work really well in here. It's cool to see the burn part of the ship with their active camouflage shimmering. The explosions go off and can expose their, disrupt their active camouflage fields. And just a nice little sequence. Here we go back into the tunnels where we have a gravity grenade. Now that thing's sucking everybody in there, throwing a projectile in there, and creating just a massive explosion to take them out. Was that needed? No, but I felt like showing it off. Now as we go up this ramp, you notice that this was not part of the original game. We've added some new areas of the ship to explore, offering some different gameplay than what you would expect from the Pillar of Honor. Part of our design process for this was that we wanted it to be seamless. We didn't want it to feel like, hey, all of a sudden this is like a whole new area. So we start off by doing an area that's traditional from what you'd expect from the Pillar of Honor, yet familiar players will realize like, hey, like this wasn't here before. This is also a good area to just have some more combat with the brutes. For the most part, the first half of the mission is all elites and grunts, and this was just a nice place to have some close quarters combat with the brutes before we get into more open areas. Now, talking about combat with the brutes, they do have the ability to use the cluster and the gravity grenades, and I also want to touch briefly on how their brute plasma rifle works. As I said, we have this idea that the brutes get the older Covenant weaponry, so the brute plasma rifle is stronger than the original, but also slower. While the brute plasma rifle isn't necessarily a unique weapon or provides a unique experience, we felt it was important to define when brutes are shooting at you, and also to have something that fired a little bit slower and was easier to dodge, considering that brutes tend to roam in packs. Now, as I drop down that maintenance hatch, you can see me put some gravity grenades to work. These things are really cool. You can see how they suck the grunts in. They just really can disrupt the battlefield. They're kind of hard to show on video because the idea of them is to throw them and move or throw something else or get into cover. Now, you'll notice my plasma rifle battery is almost dead and becoming less and less effective in the fight versus the elites. We want you to have to search for weapons and be creative with how you do things. Now, for people who are veterans at Halo 1, eventually we've all learned how to go through the whole game with nothing but the assault rifle and the pistol and not use anything else. Whether that was by design or not, it's the way it plays, and it's something that we wanted to honor. So if you play enough SPV3 and you really understand the weapons, you shouldn't have a problem going through the missions with whatever weapons you want. However, there is always an optimal way of doing things, and that's what I'm trying to show in this video. Now, interesting thing about this area I'm flooding, and this is actually based on part of the multiplayer Rat Race map. Rather than just have another hallway in the ship, we wanted something that had multiple paths. So you can see that using your radar, you're going to have to look through the area, you know, dart in and out of each hallway, go into the life pods, and it ends up playing really well with just a simple change like that. Simplicity is one of the things that Halo 1 did very well. The environments and the play spaces are not really that complicated, but it's a testament to how well the AI and the guns work that keep it interesting. Here we have a cryopod bay, which is another area which you never got to really explore in the ship in the original game. Again, we have the room split into two sections, multiple paths, multiple areas for cover. We also have the catwalks upstairs, and you'll see enemies come out of those as well and shoot down at you. The original mission really didn't have that many vertical play spaces. The only one I can think of off the top of my head is the part where there's the elites on the Covenant on the landing above us section. That's not really a knock against the level, but it was a tutorial mission in the original game, and if you're playing this, we expect that you're pretty well versed in Halo as it is. Speaking of that, we've also gotten rid of the easy difficulty, and we have a new difficulty called Noble. Now, I'm going to do another video about that in the future, but it's just one of the things that we've done to appeal to the target audience of our game. Here you have another crewman who was killed by the Brute, who was manning the gravity terminal. I'm just going to leave that one off too. Now, this is a really cool area as that it's based off boarding action. This is a really wide open area, lots of multiple levels. It plays alright here. One of the things that we do have to think of when we do missions like the Pillar of Autumn is how is it going to work later in the game when you revisit this location with the flood. And I'm sure you can get all sorts of ideas of flood dropping down in here and jumping off different levels. So it's going to be pretty cool. We have multiple routes to this location. You can either jump up here and do a little trick jump, or you can take a path on the side. Right now the gravity is off, so I'm going to show you some zero-G combat before going. You see you can float, the blood sprays, spatter in the air, the sparks hover. Ignore that grunt stuck in the crate. There's still some things that need to be done here. You see the grenades fly out like they're almost like rockets, the bodies float in the air. Just a very cool sequence to have. And you can have these in almost any location of the ship, depending on how many crewmen you leave alive. Or actually how many terminals you turn on or off. It'll affect how often the gravity goes off. And if you explore these areas enough, you might find a skull that can have some other gravity-altering properties. So you'll have skulls to hunt for in the final game as well. Just gonna, see the grenades go there. You can see them twirl slowly. I don't really know why this wasn't ever done in any of the other games. Maybe they just felt it was too complicated or would alienate too many people, but we don't really have that problem. So there the gravity goes back to normal, and that's probably a good time to end this video. Be sure to subscribe, because I do plan on doing a lot more updates soon. I know I say that all the time, and then stuff always comes up, but it's going to be different this time, I promise.